Welcome to In the Box. And today, in this, it's my pleasure to welcome former president, general manager, and coach of the Columbus Blue Jackets, Doug MacLean. Doug, how you doing?
Great, Jody. I'm starting to feel old when I see it's been 20 years since the Blue Jackets started. And I think we were there almost a year and a half before the team hit the ice. So, man, oh man, does time fly.
And you talk about, I know you're the big family guy. How is the family? Jill, Clark, Mackenzie, I know they all spent a big part of their life here, an important part of their life. How are they doing?
Well, you know, they're doing really well. Clark lives in Chicago. He's a player agent in Chicago. Mackenzie had been living in South Florida here and then just recently moved to Cincinnati a month ago. So she's realized she wanted to go back to Ohio. I think one of the greatest things about our time with the Blue Jackets was that both the kids got to graduate from high school in Columbus. Clark from Thomas Worthington and Mackenzie from the Columbus School for Girls. And you know, they look back on their high school years as some of their greatest, and both of them to this day really consider Columbus like their hometown. I know Clark's going there for Thanksgiving with friends, and Mackenzie, as I said, is in Cincinnati now and spends a lot of time in Columbus. So, you know, we're lucky as a hockey family. I think Clark moved there in 5th grade and Mackenzie moved there in 3rd grade, and both getting to graduate from high school was really pretty special for us.
Yeah, that's excellent. I mean, that's nice to hear they're coming back. I mean, you were here, you were so busy, and I want to get into that because I can't even imagine the undertaking, but that's great to hear they're coming back and calling this home. I want to go back. You said it's almost 22 years ago. You're right, since you've been hired, since you were hired as the Blue Jackets GM and president. February 1998. What's going on in your head at that time when you get hired?
Well, you know, I just had finished coaching the Florida Panthers, and it was, you know, it was late, probably early December when, you know, I was finished with the Panthers. And I remember hearing from a guy that I had met when I was coaching the Baltimore Skipjacks in the American Hockey League. And actually, I met him through Jeff Rimmer, and which is sad to say, but it's, but anyway, I meet this guy, and he called me through Jeff giving him my number and said, look, my boss, I work for a company called Worthington Industries, and my boss just bought an NHL team, and I'm going to give you his phone number, and I think you should give him a call. He said, we met when I was coaching Baltimore, and then prior to that, or after that, coaching the Detroit Red Wings. He came and I showed him around after a game one night, and that's really the only acquaintance we had. So he gave me Mr. Mack's number, and I called Mr. Mack from my home in Florida, and he said, oh, I know you. You're the guy that just got fired from the Panthers. And I said, yeah, that's me. And I said, I'd really like to talk to you about the job in Columbus. So we actually met, he and I, probably 3 or 4 days later at the Gulfstream Country Club. And I'll never forget pulling up to the Gulfstream Country Club, which is, by the way, 5 minutes up the road from where I live here right now. And pulling up to the driveway, and the guy valet comes out and said, hey, he recognized me. He said, hey, coach. He said, you don't have a jacket to get in here? And I said, no, man, jacket. Mr. McConnell said it was casual, so I wore a golf shirt and slacks. All of a sudden, he takes me downstairs, and the average age of the Gulfstream Country Club, I'd say, is about 80. He took me downstairs, and he showed me this closet, and it was lime green, orange, yellow. You know, it actually looked like the clothes that Bill Davidge wears. And I grabbed this blue jacket, and it was about 2 sizes too small. I'd go up and have lunch with him. And that was really the start. It sort of went from there. That was my very first interview with Mr. Mack. And probably a month later, I was hired. He was instrumental, Mr. Mack, no doubt, but a guy that was really instrumental, who was always been a great friend and tragically passed away, was John Christie, who was really a guy that was instrumental in you know, making me, you know, helping me get the job. I hadn't met him till my interview process, and John Christie was just a wonderful guy. So it was kind of funny how it all came about. And I'm thinking, what the hell am I getting into? I mean, I'm a coach, And now I'm going in to start this franchise. Jody, it was really a scary situation, to be quite honest, and especially going into a non-traditional hockey market. And it was an experience I'll never forget, and you'll never replicate when you get to start a franchise, but it was special.
Now, it's interesting because it wasn't just the Blue Jackets coming in, it was the Minnesota Wild, and you have an expansion draft, and you have and now we're in the middle of two here where you just see Vegas come in, and then you see Seattle coming in next year. Completely different animal, right, Doug? I mean, this is a situation where not only you got to try to build your team, you got to compete against another organization that's trying to get off the ground.
Well, it was really interesting because Nashville had come in and Atlanta had come in 2 of the previous 3 years and really had taken a good chunk of the pool. And then Minnesota and us both come in at the same time. By the way, for $80 million was the expansion fee at that time. Seattle just paid $650 and Vegas $500. But the rules were really tough. And I remember talking to Doug Riseborough, the GM in Minnesota. I mean, we couldn't really cut deals with teams because the way Vegas and Seattle have been able to, because of the fact that we were both picking and both, we had to cut deals between ourselves, and that wasn't going to happen. So it was a real trying thing. But I think, even the year prior to that, I'll never forget Clark coming home from school. And like I said, he was probably in 5th grade. He said, Dad, hockey's not going to work here. They hate hockey. They just want to, they love football. They hate hockey here. It's not going to work, Dad. So, it was building the team. It was trying to sell season tickets, we had to sell 12,000 season tickets and PSLs to get accepted to the league. We had to have a $3 million TV deal in place. We had to finish doing the lease on the building that was being built. I remember going in there with my first trip in with Mr. Mack, and he showed me this gravel pit in the floor. He said, that's where the arena's going. And I thought, are you kidding me? This is where the arena's going, right where this gravel is. So it was amazing to go through the experience of building the building, working with Brian Ellis at Nationwide and his people, and going through that whole process of building the building, selling tickets, selling the game, trying to educate people on what the NHL was. And I have probably 1,000 mugs from luncheons I spoke at in those years. It was a real challenging, fun experience, but trying to build a team through the expansion draft. Here's what the frustrating thing was about the expansion draft, Jody, is that I had already signed Tugnut and Mark Denis prior to the expansion draft. I traded for Denis with Colorado, gave up a 2nd-round pick for him, and I had cut a deal with Tugnut to come in as our goaltender. He just finished in Pittsburgh. So I had to waste picks. So I picked goalies. I picked Tabarachi, and I picked couple other goaltenders because I already had my goalies, but I couldn't tell anybody I had my goalies. But so many of our picks and Minnesota's picks were wasted picks because teams just exposed their high-priced guys. So we ended up wasting a ton of picks and, picking up guys here and there. But I don't know if the 26 or whatever guys we drafted, there was probably 12 on each team that actually started the season with us. So it was a frustrating experience. And I remember Bill Daly calling Riseborough and I down to the hotel lobby in the middle of the draft saying, okay, boys, enough of these games. You're wasting picks. And we're saying, well, yeah, we're not taking a $4 million player when our payroll is going to be $17 million. So
wow.
It was a challenging, fun experience, but something you'll never forget,
No. And the players that you took, I mean, the team that you built for the opening face-off of this franchise, a lot of character, a lot of people that were still people talk about here. You mentioned Tugnut. How about Lyle Odeline, Kevin Dineen, Tyler Wright? The way you built the team, even though you had your struggles, you got to be pretty proud of what you were able to put together as far as people and being a part of the community and still talked about in this community.
Well, when we come in that first year, it was really challenging because Minnesota and us were the big rivals. And I remember when we finished the season, year one, and we finished with more points in Minnesota, it was almost like winning the Stanley Cup, to be quite honest. So exciting that we finished ahead of Minnesota. And, Dave King did a great job for us. Jacques Lemaire did a fabulous job for Minnesota, but to finish ahead of Minnesota in year one and to watch the players become accepted. I mean, Tugger became a rock star, for the presidency. They had the little fake thing, and Lyle was our captain. Lyle gave me my challenges, trust me, but he was a great first captain. Jeff Sanderson was on that team, a 40-goal scorer. I mean, it was really a real good group of guys. And it's funny how many of those guys I still hear from the odd time. We run into each other. So they were, and Bruce Gardner, who I believe scored the first ever goal for the Blue Jackets. I remember game one, I'm thinking, oh my God, this is the most exciting. My parents flew in from PEI, and we're all there as a family. And we had I hosted a bunch of people up from PEI for that first game, and we go up in the first period 3-0. And I'm like, oh my God, this is easy against Chicago. And we lose the game. And I thought, oh man, here we go. But you know what? As trying as it was over those, I was in Columbus over 10 years. As trying as it was something you'll never, ever experience again. And I remember Jill saying to me all the time, she'll tell me something we did in Columbus, and she said, "Oh yeah, you were in a fog. You weren't with us for a lot of those 10 years. So just forget about it. Let's move on." So.
Well, I don't know how you would be, because you got the hockey department, hockey ops, then you got business, then you got community development, and you're the man with all the answers, right?
Well, you know what? It was funny how it happened. I went there as a GM, and I remember meeting with Mr. Mack and saying, "Mr. Mack, we need a president. We need a president that's going to oversee the building and the business side." And he looked at me, he said, "You can be the president." I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" I think he thought it was like a AAA midget team.
That's great.
All of a sudden I become the president. I mean, oh man. So that's when, it really became dealing with the lease, dealing with Nationwide, dealing with all the extra things that I probably shouldn't have been involved with. Obviously Mike Priest was the president of JMAC at the time. John Christie was, and then John Christie went to Worthington, and then so we all of a sudden, lots of support from the JMAC group, but it was still we still had to make the call, and it was I had some great people though. I really had some great people with me from day one there that did a fabulous job from the business side and the hockey side. I just tell you, I hired Michael Yormark from Florida to come in to be our corporate guy. He sold 6 $1 million deals in about a 4-month period. That was General Motors, that was Budweiser, that was National City, that was Nationwide, $1 million deals that were unheard of. So he set the tone for the corporate side. Mike Humes came in and replaced him after. He left shortly before we started. Michael left, and Mike Humes came in, and Jim Clark was there with me for the 10 years, who did an unbelievable job of running Syracuse and really being my right-hand man. So there was so many good people that I have, and I still keep in touch with a ton of them, to be quite honest.
Yeah, that's great. Well, they're lucky because you're a loyal guy. So once you're in, it seems like you really take care of your people. So that's one great thing about you, among other things, obviously. But listen, you had us in the community. You understood what you had to do here. It was grassroots. So you had George Matthews and Billy Davidge. They were out doing hockey schools on the street. We were in hospitals and schools. This was something that you had to do and understand, but it was also, Mr. Mack had a big role in that too, did he not?
Mr. Mack was the consummate community guy. And look, he took I don't know how many people know this, but he and the chairman of Nationwide cut the deal to bring the Blue Jackets to Columbus on a napkin. Nationwide were going to build Diamond McPherson and Mr. Mack. And they did the deal on a napkin. And Mr. Mack told me from the interview process all the way through my 10 years there, I bought the team for the community, and I wanted to be part of the community. So Mr. Mack was the driving force behind that. There is no There's no denying that. And then you go to Joel Zygmunt and J.D. Kirchhoff and all the people that were out on the street selling the game, and Stinger and all the amazing things. I'll just tell you one little Stinger story. We hired Stinger. I had to go as the president, go to the tryouts for Stinger, and Kathy Little, who worked with the McConnell family and is still at Worthington Industries, her and I were the judges for the mascots. We hired this Billy guy from University of Wisconsin as our mascot. He was terrific. He had a van with all the mirrors in it. He used to practice. The day before our home opener, I'm sitting there, and Carrie, my assistant, says, Billy, the mascot, would like to speak to you. And he walked into my office and he broke down in tears, crying that he couldn't do the job. It was too much pressure, and he was resigning the day before our home opener. So I phone over to the chiller and say, I need somebody over there that can skate. Who works at the chiller who can skate with a costume on? And they sent me over Jason, who became Stinger for the last 20 years. Yeah. And I talked to Jason last week, as a matter of fact, and he's not allowed to talk to anybody in costume, but every time I'd run into him at an all-star game over the last 10 or 12 years, he'd go, hey, Mac, how you doing? So that's how Jason became Stinger, and I think he just retired, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he did. He's passed it along.
So many bizarre things that went on, but we made it. We made it through it anyway.
Yeah, you did. Hey, you should have called Syracuse. I would have gladly come up and been your mascot for number one.
It's too hard to fight in that costume, Jody.
Yeah, right. You're right. Hey, listen, how about when you left the Blue Jackets? You really found a unique position for yourself. I mean, you were a part, I don't know if people know around here, they probably do, but you were part of must-watch TV at noon, coast to coast on Sportsnet with you and Kipper. And it was, I mean, it was amazing. You took your knowledge, you set this up here and it ended, but tell us about your next chapter and how it's been and what you're doing now.
Well, you know what? It was a tough ending to leave the Blue Jackets, and especially the way it all happened with, you know, the team struggling and frustration of not being able to build a winner there over the time there. You know, we went through a couple of lockouts or a lockout that was really challenging, but I left there and I had interviewed in Arizona right after the Blue Jackets, thought I was going to get the job. Don Maloney ended up getting it. I was offered a couple of player personnel jobs, but Nick Kyprios called me and said, hey, Nick had played for me in Baltimore in the American Hockey League and played for me in Washington. He said, hey, why don't you come and try to do some TV? And I remember saying to TJ Labandola, when we'd be in it, you know, TJ was my CFO at the time, and he was from day one. We hired TJ to be our thing. I remember going into TJ when we're grinding over money and how are we going to break even, or how are we going to make money? And I said, you know, TJ, when I leave here, I may just go and do some TV. I need a break from this stuff. This is too much aggravation. So I went with Sportsnet part-time the first year. We're still living in Columbus, and I traveled up there a couple days a week. And then they offered me a full-time job. And you know what? The problem with the job, Jody, when you go to media is if you don't tell it the way it is, you can't make it. You know, especially when you've been a GM and a coach in the league, you've got to tell it the way it is. And so when you get into that, you have to make a break saying, you know, it's going to be tough to go back to the management side when you're in there grinding and telling the way it is. So, you know what, it was a great side of the business. I enjoyed it. I did 10 years there. We had a lot of fun. I really appreciated the opportunity. I mean, look, Jody, I spent 40 years in hockey, you know, so how many people get to spend 40 years of your work career, of which was 44 years in hockey? And so whether it was management, coaching, I did 22 years in the NHL, and then to be able to do another 10 prior to that, coached college. So, I mean, then junior, I mean, I'm really, really lucky and fortunate, and to do it in Columbus was really special. Mr. Mac was a fabulous guy to work for. Tough. He was tough. JP was a good guy, was tough. Mike Priest was helpful. They were a good group of people, and I think back and I left there kind of bitter, and you let that go. But they were all very good people. They really were.
Well, you got us off the ground here, Doug, and we know it was a big undertaking. And you know what? It's you did some great things here, and we appreciate it. So thank you for that. You know, and what you're doing now and what you've done, it's all knowledge, and you've handed it on to some people here, and you've left your mark. So there's a lot of things to be proud of here. And 20 years ago, man, this team was, well, November 20 years ago, you would have been just started. The season would have just started, and you know, now are you writing a book? Did Rimmer tell me you're writing a book now?
Well, you know what? It's funny. I did one other thing that happened. I was just sitting at the cottage a month ago, and I get this call, and it's a Columbus call, and I don't answer, and I let it go to voicemail, and it's JD Kirchhoff calling, and he left a message. He said, "Hey man, we're all the original Blue Jackets staff that started with the Blue Jackets and are still in Columbus. We're having a night out tonight." And he said, "Is there any way you'd call me back?" So I phoned them back, and I'm telling you, it was a highlight of my life. Those probably 15 or 20 people got on the phone. We FaceTimed and we laughed and we talked, and it was really special. They were a good group of people. Some of them, Mark Gregory still with the Blue Jackets, Mollahan still with the Blue Jackets, Harry. So we had a great evening chatting about old times, and so I've got great memories. I know. I wish I would have made a couple of different draft picks, but that didn't happen. Every former GM says the very same thing. But you know what? There was some great players. There was some great management people. There was some great off-ice people. And you and Rimmer and George Matthews and Billy Davidge were all a big part of that. And I appreciate the support from you guys.
Well, we know your heart was here, Doug, and it's still here, and we could tell. So, you know, we appreciate you taking the time to talk to me here today on this this segment. And you know, if you are writing a book, and there's a lot of people that should write a book, but I hope you write a book.
Yeah, I think I'm through 9 chapters right now. So I think your name is probably in there, but I'm not sure. The only guy I haven't talked about in there is Rimmer. I just got to keep him out of it somehow.
Well, we'll end on that note. You know what? Again, thanks for your time. You know, you're just a real classy guy, and a guy that's just, like I said, loyal, and it's helped us here in Columbus. 20 years ago, you kicked this off, and we're reliving some memories, and you're a big part of it. So, Doug, we appreciate your time here in the box.
Thank you, Jody, and really appreciate everything you've done for the organization too, man. You're a special friend and a good guy. Take care.
Thanks, Doug. Appreciate it.
Thank you.